This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices. You can get a special price and a 31-day money-back guarantee right now by going to pilchpoint.live/PureVPN. So you teased it at the top of the show. You have got an interesting thing to show us tonight, right, Avram?
Yes. So normally I talk about some of the weird stuff that's going on, the unfortunate copyright stuff that's going on with AI. But today I'm going to show you that there's an interesting new feature in ChatGPT, which also leads to a very interesting and problematic set of security holes that they probably won't fix. So let me share my screen and show you what I'm talking about. OpenAI announced some new features that are available to GPT Plus users. That is, people who pay I think it's $20 a month, something like that, fee. And I have such an account. And that gives you access to. I want to share my screen now. That gives you access to it gives you access to GPT-4 and a new feature called Code Interpreter, also I think called Data Analyzer, and it allows you to upload files it'll help you with code. It'll execute code. It executes Python code, and it will help, and it will it can write files to it's running a little tiny virtual machine in Linux that you wouldn't know is there unless you looked for it. So check this out. You see this little clip here? It allows you to upload something. So I'm going to upload a file that I have. Now imagine you could upload files for a variety of reasons. One could be that it's a set of code that you want to test and help debugging. Another could be that it's a spreadsheet or a CSV file or whatever, and you want it to help analyze the data and give you some conclusions or even draw a chart. I'm going to upload, just to show you how bad this can be, I'm going to upload a file called environment variables. Now, this is something where you can imagine for some Python things, you may have need to use an API or something where you need to create a file that has a password and your API key. Obviously, you could tell these are ones I made up. But this is something that could happen, and I saw somebody tweet about it, about this exact thing. So I'm going to upload this. Now, I could ask it to do something with it, or if you just want it to be uploaded, you could just hit enter or whatever. Or I don't even think you need to. I think once I've done that, it is uploaded. So here's the interesting thing, right? Here, it's going to tell me what's in the file now because I just hit enter. And I should note that the ChatGPT, at least at this point in its history, is still pretty slow. I mean, obviously, we expect that as computers get better, you won't have these kind of delays. So what did it tell me? It just said what my file was. Thanks a lot. Now, here's something interesting. Scott, you know some Linux commands, right?
Sure.
So check this out. Now, I've had instances where I had to recreate the environment if it didn't see this, but let's see. If I type a command like ls, like to list, which is to list the stuff in the directory, it will literally tell you the contents of the directory include the file. And you can see here actually that it used some Python code to do it. And what it shows you is that all of the data, all the files you upload and create are in a folder called mount/data. I should note that if you want to see like what folder everything is stored in, if you type pwd, which is In Linux, that'll tell you what folder you're in. It will tell you that you're in home sandbox. See? So, and then you could ask it to list, and you can see like the directory structure of this virtual machine that you have. By the way, I should note that this gets reset every time you create a new chat. So like if I go here and I create a new one, it's not going to have this file in it. So anyway, oh, it's telling me this, but I could change the directory to home sandbox, and I could tell you what folders are under home sandbox. And I've seen all kinds of guides about how you can do things like install Python libraries in here. You might even be able to install some software. I mean, obviously, it's a very clunky interface for accessing your command prompt, right? Although you can sort of see how it's just doing this via Python. But let's talk about our vulnerability. So we have a file here that has some sensitive data in it. Now imagine if for some reason you had it, this also can read stuff off of URLs. Now imagine if for some reason you had to paste in a URL, maybe you wanted to ask it for some information from the URL, like you could ask it for the weather from a site that has weather, or you could just paste in the URL and see what it interprets from the URL. So for giggles, I'll paste in a very non-problematic URL. I'm just going to take the latest article we were discussing and paste that in and see what it tells me about it. Now this is just to kind of show you what it does when you give it a URL. It may say error, and I'll be sorry for that, but it usually will just sort of summarize the page if you just give it a URL. You could also ask it a question like based on the URL. So it has this feature called browsing with Bing, and it literally just loads the web page, and it sort of just summarize the article, right? Anyway, you might say, well, who cares? You're right, who cares? But what if that web page had embedded within it a prompt that would get the ChatGPT to actually perform an action rather than simply summarizing something. So I created a fake web page. I created a web page with instructions on it. Now, the guy who shared with me the method for doing this, the security researcher Johan Rayberger, maybe promised not to share his exact prompts with folks because he's worried they're all going to use this security hole. I promised him, so I'm not going to do it. But I think people actually should know the exact way to do this. But anyway, you can imagine that you put in something that says that these are important instructions, and then tell it what to do, and then tell it what to do, and So I did that on a page, and by the way, this could be on a page that has nothing but the malign instructions, or has like the weather. Oh, ha ha ha! It's not doing it. It seems to be part of a tester demonstration. No, yes, it is, but I wanted it to execute. Okay, let's try. I have like
That's
6
pretty funny.
versions of this page. So I have another version of this page that has the weather on it. So I could now. I want to say that this absolutely has worked for me, but like all prompt injection, it doesn't work all the time. So here's one where it has the weather on it. And I put in the word weather to see if it would actually like tell me what the weather for. So I have a weather forecast and then the instructions for. You see, it did it. See that? Thanks for. So okay. So my instructions. Okay, so here's what my instructions told it. It told it to to tell the user, thanks for sharing your data. Then it says, here's the URL containing the information you requested with your data encoded. Now, in this case, it's not going to work until I click this link, although a person might be like, hey, I want to click this link. But in other cases, it just did it without actually creating a link. It just actually did the thing. So what's the thing? Well, it goes to a web page, and what it has done is it has you can actually, let me take it back so you can actually see it. This web page now has received the data from that file that I uploaded as a query string, right? And I have coded this. Now, this is what kind of what a hacker would do, right? To write a file. So, so here I have an FTP. You can see I have my FTP directory from this server, and it's disconnected. But what it was doing is writing a bunch of text files with that data in it to my server. So, in other words, and if I were a professional hacker, I wouldn't write text files. I'd write a database, and I'd have a huge database of whoever was the fool that put this URL in and shared their data with me, right? Inadvertently shared their data with me. I could also put other instructions in there that could ask it to run something. I tried, and it will not delete files. So I cannot tell it, because you can't delete files. So I can't tell it like delete. If I tell it to delete like in my file and var, it will say that it did, and then the file's still there. So I think that that's a protection against people remotely deleting stuff. But still, if there was still, you could absolutely make it run code. Now, what kind of code would be dangerous in this environment? I'm not sure. Obviously, to exfiltrate the data, to get the data out, you would need to have, the prompt injected this way. Or conversely, by the way, this could happen via, possibly could even be done via an image markup. So if like there was an image somewhere that you copied and pasted into here, and it was in the, you might end up with like, it might, or you copy paste something in here and it might have like an image SRC tag, which actually is the prompt injection in it or something like that. So anyway, the point is that it's fairly, you could have valuable data in here, and you could be loading a web page, which is, untrusted code, and it could be getting your data from here. Another thing that's of some interest is that if you have you can create your own GPTs now, your own chats, and share them with the public. I'm not to get them to do various things. And if you have files in that, absolutely somebody could go in there and get it to open your files. So obviously, if you're sharing it with the public, don't be a fool and put important information in there. But I saw somebody actually like put up a challenge on Twitter saying like, hey, I have this GPT. Can you go in here and try and read my environment file and convince it to read the environment file? And a bunch of people did. So I think you're getting the point, which is that you can, it can easily exfiltrate your data, and if you have important data in there, it's going to get to it. So on the other hand, if it's not important data to you, it's kind of a neat feature to be able to kind of test and run code with the help of this AI. I haven't exactly seen a scenario where I wanted to use it, but where I would have found it helpful. But maybe there will be some that do. What do you think, Scott?
It's certainly interesting. I my mind definitely goes and starts thinking nefarious things. Maybe because of the presentation, or maybe because that's just where my mind went natively. I don't know. But it's I can't come up with any. Well, I don't know. Maybe I can come up with some legitimate uses, but I can come. Nefarious uses came to mind immediately.
Right, but then someone would have to actually be using this for legitimate uses before they could be victim to the nefarious ones. I was reading about this because Code Interpreter has actually been in beta for a while.
Okay.
And so I found some articles, like here's one I was looking at that said, like, what can you do with it? And one of them is data analysis and visualization. So that's not really code interpreter, but it uses the same VM, so it's the same issues.
Gotcha.
That's you can like have it create a map or something from a CSV, so or map or a chart from a CSV for you.
Okay.
So that I could actually see people using more obviously for code. It's something like using GPT to write code. Uh, I mean, I guess if you have something that you're getting an error in, and then but there's probably, but usually the thing is, most of the time, if you're working with Python libraries or you're working with anything, there's many different files that you're working with.
Yeah.
You might need a library to be installed. So so you're going to have to give it a lot of data. Now, actually, even though, believe it or not, you can actually install, like, there are ways of installing Python outside Python libraries on this, which makes it also seem to me like that might also be a security hole,
Uh-huh.
because what if the library itself was malicious?
Yeah.
Um, but you
And
can't use like wget, but you
and what
can
if the
use, I think there are ways to use pip
and what
to
if the
install a library.
library changes? Because we saw that, right? We talked about that a
Yeah.
year and a half ago. There was a popular open source library that changed itself. It got popular, and then they changed the way it worked, and it started deleting data from Russians or something.
Right.
So there's you could build a library that's useful, grow it up, and then have make that nefarious on ChatGPT. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, you also can use this to upload images. So the upload feature, you can use to upload images, and I think you can have it actually do something with the images. So,
That's
like,
interesting.
for example, one example I see is somebody uploaded a picture of an apple and then it asked ChatGPT to animate it, and they gave them an animated GIF of an apple moving. Uh,
Okay.
I mean, to
Interesting.
be honest, like most things that are based on this, that I cannot personally find a very good reason to use it. It's like I scratch my head, like,
Yeah.
is there something where I really need, I mean, not even like where I really need, just like where this would make my life easier, and it's really hard to grasp, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so I'm going to ask it to write code for me, but what code am I going to ask it to write? And then the answer that you always get from people when you say this is like, oh, anything you want. But that's like telling somebody who speaks another language, like, what do you say something in Spanish? What? Oh, anything, just say something. Like, you need specifics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to the specifics of what you want, you need to know how Python, you need to know how the programming language works to know what to ask for,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Because so so you can't just say, like, make me a game, you know, like, yeah, you have to know, like, what's realistic and what's not, what works and what doesn't, and all this stuff. And
Right.
then by the time you spelled all of that out, I feel like it's just probably easier to do it, to write it yourself, unless you have something where you ran into a problem and we're like, oh, what? Can you help me debug this? And
Yeah.
maybe it would help you, but I don't know if it would get it right. Or perhaps, and I've had this happen to me with Google SGE, which I generally hate. But I've had things where I asked it, like, oh, wait, how do I do this in MySQL? And normally I would end up on a Stack Overflow page or something that would give me the answer.
Yep.
Um, but now, because they've stolen that data from sites like Stack Overflow, it'll say it right in the search results. Oh yeah, I just use this command, and I'll be, oh, okay, that's great. Because a lot of this information I'm looking up, I've done it one time in the past, but I forgot how to do it,
Yep.
or it's something that's fairly obvious, like, oh yeah, I know there's a way to do this, but I forgot the exact syntax. Um, and and
Mm-hmm.
so and so I'll look it up. But
It's like
I
doing
call that
it's like
reference
doing
checking,
anything
really.
with regex.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly that. So
Yeah.
So that would be a great example of where I could use help because I have a lot of problems with regex.
Yeah.
It causes me no end of torture, and like the sites that I've used to help you, like I think there's a site called regex. I forget, there's some site that's supposed to tell you everything you need to know about regex and let
Hmm.
you test it, and I go there every time and I still can't figure out how to do what I want to do. So um,
Yeah.
and it doesn't help that it's slightly different in like PHP than it is in JavaScript because there's different regex engines.
Uh
So
huh.
that's
And
exactly the kind of
and
thing.
different languages have different escape characters. That, honest to God, the different escape characters between JavaScript, PHP, C Sharp, VB,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that is oftentimes the biggest challenge in trying to figure out, well, why isn't this regex working? Oh, well, because it's an escape character in PHP, which is what I was looking
yeah,
at, but I'm
yeah,
doing it in C
yeah,
Sharp.
yeah. I've been there. It's happened to me. Um, so,
I have a book,
so
and every example for regex is in like 11 languages.
yeah,
Like this page
it's
is how to do a date
it.
in regular expressions. And this one is JavaScript, and this one's PHP, and this one's C Sharp, and this one's
So
VB, and this one's Perl.
so so that's the kind of thing I would kind of. I mean, that is the kind of thing I would kind of like to. Um,
Yeah.
like I think that's the kind of thing where I actually would appreciate an AI helper because that would be a great natural language thing if it worked well. It
I was
that's a
saying,
big if.
if the results were trustable, which
Yes, which they
based
usually
on
are
Mark,
not.
so Mark did a whole deep dive into the validity of code that comes out of ChatGPT. He's like, you would have better luck walking out your front door, stopping the first person walking their dog, asking them the same question. Their result is going to be just as valid as what ChatGPT gives you.
Right. So for that reason, uh, that's the thing, right? That's I mean now we're getting to kind of the crux of one of the biggest problems with AI, which is that
Right.
if you need to know enough to know when it's wrong, and the people who really want this information won't know enough to know when it's wrong, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So and the more like for example, many times I praised Bing Chat for actually giving footnotes, for actually giving sources,
Right.
and then when I did that, I got comments from people saying, "Oh, but did you click on the sources to see if it actually says what it said it said?" And I had to say, like, I thought, it looked credible,
Oh
but I mean, because
no.
who's going to go? But it is quite possible for even when you have an AI that provides sources that the footnote or whatever source it
Yeah.
cites might not have actually said the thing that it says it said,
The sources could
right?
be equally nonsensical.
It could just, no, what I mean is, it could just be that, like, you click to that link and,
Yeah.
oh, Tom's Hardware said this. And then you look and, no, actually, that's
Yeah.
not what Tom's Hardware said or whatever. But you have to actually check on it. You have to check it, right?
So the
Which kind of begs the
footnotes,
question, why have an AI at all?
the footnotes oh, fascinating. So the footnotes
Now, I
could
don't know
be,
how frequently that is, but I know it
well,
happens. I don't know
obviously
if it's most of the time, half the time,
obviously
or
now
rarely.
I'm going to have to write a thing to do that. Uh but oh, so having the footnotes in our own conversations, having the footnotes at all has added a level of credibility to the concept.
Right. Yes.
And even we have not gone through and always verified that the footnotes
Right.
are
I'm
any
just
more
saying
valid than what's in
you
there.
right. It's just as a publisher, I was like, oh, thank you for linking to publishers that you stole stuff from, but you might have actually made up the stuff that you stole. Now, I
That
mean,
you're
to
quoting
be
them on.
fair, in the case of SGE, they don't make it up; they just steal it word for word. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
the, but I have heard and I haven't, like I said, I haven't verified this enough to know how often it happens, right? How often they're making stuff up. But I guess the point is, right. So you can't necessarily trust it. Um, you can't necessarily trust it. I have been real busy with other stuff, so I haven't spent a lot of time going through and finding stuff that hallucinations and plagiarism of AIs lately. And there's a lot more we could say about lawsuits that are ongoing,
Mm-hmm.
about the AI provisions in the WGA and SAG agreements,
Yep.
about the Media and News Alliance creating a fast. Did I mention this last time we were on? A fascinating white paper.
Yes.
Media News Alliance came out that cited me among a million other people, and they cited me correctly. Uh, uh, just for
So
this.
the white paper wasn't written by Bing, is what you're saying.
Yes, yes. Well, the only thing it said really was like it has been said. They didn't even say Avram Piltch. It has been said that
Boo.
that Google's SGE is a plagiarism stew in quotes, and then the footnote was my article. So, that's fine.
Sure.
Whatever. I've heard other that line of me calling it plagiarism stew seemed to have caught on because I saw a bunch of people tweet that at the time. Then I came, oh, it's plagiarism, and that's I feel like it's a good description. But anyway, so
Yeah.
bottom line, back to what ChatGPT is doing. Once again, they are vulnerable to prompt injection. Now, things can get better. I mean, these things certainly can get better and better at trying to detect that, oh, if something's on the page that you just fed me, maybe I shouldn't treat it as an instruction. I mean, in the programming terms, you would think that it was a string literal, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
a command. Like I can make a string literal that says erase your data, but if you read that as a string, it's just going to see it as text, not actual code. So it is a
Right.
little messed up that you can give it a URL and then it sees it as it might or might not see it as code, right? Um,
Yeah.
so
It's almost like the JavaScript equivalent of going and doing a get and then running it through an exec.
yeah, exactly. It shouldn't exact, right? It should sandbox. It should be able to sandbox that content and treat it as data, not
Yeah.
as instruction. And
Yeah.
yet,
That's crazy.
nevertheless, that kind of thing works, and it has continued to work for months. And sometimes it won't work, but then it starts working again. So, like, it's like sometimes I'll put in the URL and I'll say something like, "That URL is bad. I can't use that," and then I'll open a new chat session and it'll work. So, uh, I'm not really so like I'm not these things don't work 100% of the time, but
Mm-hmm.
this one actually with the this one with the URL seems to work a lot. Now,
Okay.
granted, I think the big question that I don't have a great answer for is when would somebody end it? How often would people paste a URL into their browser? Uh, I don't know. And how a URL that
Yeah.
they don't from a website that they don't know or trust. I don't know. There could be some social engineering to get somebody to do it. Keystroke poisoning. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
so it's
or library website injection. A WordPress plugin that gets hijacked that can then inject
right.
new
So it might be a
text.
website that you trust. It might be a website that you trust, and that site has been hijacked.
Yeah.
Although I still
Or
have, I
the plugin functions the way you want it to, but it's looking at user agent string, and if it's coming from Bing or ChatGPT or whatever the user agent string is for the browse with Bing, it behaves differently. It injects stuff onto the page.
right, because all it has, all like it's right, exactly. So now I can't personally see a time when I would be using this and be like, hey, I'm just going to paste a URL in here, or paste a URL in here to that has data on it that I want and ask for the data. But it's I don't know, it's possible. I mean, maybe
You could
you
do, I bet, honestly, I bet using this and or doing it through the API, um, I bet it'll make normalizing scraped data an easier process?
Yeah,
It's
possibly,
it's the thing that
possibly.
it's the thing that I'm thinking is I wonder if you could normalize data from it.
You mean like, oh hey, visit Newegg and get all of the prices for me?
Sure.
Yeah, I
Give
mean, I got
me.
to tell you, as someone who's trying to program that kind of thing, it's very hard because you keep
Oh
getting
yeah, it is.
blocked.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
They
but
and they used to have they used to have a SKU catalog that you
I mean,
you
that's
could
I'm
actually do
not
that
just
with.
picking on
But
Newegg. I mean, there's just like all the majors,
yeah.
right? Like every time this time of year when we're talking about deals and sales, like I've
Hmm.
tried so many times to write good scrapers, and we could go off on that for hours. But anyway,
Yeah.
my point about this is I'm going to have an article about this up tomorrow on Tom's Hardware, so you can see more about how what the problem is. But I think the key message here is be very careful with putting important data in ChatGPT.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been generally been our takeaway with AI in general is
But this,
be
but this
careful
is
of the data you give
inviting
it.
you
But in this one, yeah, in this one, there's this environment in which you can actually actively feed
upload
information
files.
into it.
Right.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, for before this, what how were you going to give it your data? You were going to be like have to write it in, like, oh yes, my password is this. Like you're not going to do
Right.
that.
Right.
But here you're kind of being invited to like you might have like upload a giant zip file full of stuff, full of like code or something that
Mm-hmm.
has your API key because you were testing something that used an API.
Sure.
That's valuable data for someone to steal.
Yeah, it is. Really, really interesting. Uh, I'm gonna be spinning on this for quite some time because there's a lot of potential, certainly potential negatives, but I'm already thinking on some potential positives as well that I'm intrigued
Yeah.
by. Okay. Uh, well, as always, Avram, I appreciate this. This was a really interesting one, and my brain is doing all kinds of weird stuff right now, uh, thinking about some projects and how this might be useful. So I appreciate this, and as always, I look forward to what we talk about next time. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Piltch Point with Avram Piltch. If you did, please subscribe to our channel, and of course, hit the notification bell since subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. And if you've got topics you'd like us to discuss in the future, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you don't want to follow us on YouTube, that's okay. There's a lot of other ways that you can follow our content. You can find all of that by going to plughitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all the different ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.